Welcome everyone to the Ultimate Supply Chain podcast. I'm Lou Barber, Global Head of Marketing at DHL Supply Chain, and today we are diving into the increasingly strategic world of service logistics. We'll be exploring what's shaping the sector, the role of AI, and how companies can unlock the profit potential that is often hidden in the post-sales operations. And I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic guests. Firstly, John Carroll, who is the CEO of the Service Council. His team speaks to service leaders all around the world, gathering insights on what's working and what isn't, what's changing, and what's keeping them up at night. And secondly, our own Jose Davidov, who's the Chief Customer Officer at DHL Service Logistics Business. He works closely with some of the largest customers we have to make sure that their post-sales operations run smoothly and strategically. Welcome, both of you. Before we dive in to the service logistics lake, let's find out a bit about you. So, John, let's start with you. Can you tell us a bit about your role and what drew you into this space?
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite, Lou and Jose. Thank you for being a very valued part of our advisory board. Thank you very much. My name's John Carroll. I've been a researcher to the post-sales aftermarket supply chain for the last 25 years now. I started with a Boston-based research analyst firm called Aberdeen Group. Spent 5 years there co-founding their service chain management research practice, as well as some of the adjacent research practices like supply chain procurement and customer management. Did that for about 5 years and has since pivoted and launched the Service Council about 15 years ago. Really at the heart of what the Service Council is intending to be and living every day is a community and an information platform where service leaders can come together, uncommon industries can come together and share and learn. And sometimes it's success stories and oftentimes it's pitfall avoidance scenarios. And certainly supply chain has reared its head. I won't call it ugly, but it's come about in topic with our community and our membership in terms of the importance of transformation and staying ahead of the curve. So really pleased to be joining you today. I'm a father first. I'm the CEO of the council. So my day-to-day operational role is that of Chief Research Officer. Really pleased to be joining you.
Amazing. Thanks, John. Jose, same question to you. What does your role involve and how did you end up here?
Thank you, Lou, and thanks for the opportunity for being here and having John joining us, which I think is going to be quite interesting of a conversation. So my name is Jose Davidov. As you mentioned, Lou, I am part of the service logistics business within DHL. I've been part of the organization for the past 23 years, starting my journey in Mexico. I am right now here in Mexico as well at the main office, which is quite interesting. And so I've been in different parts of the business the last 8 years of my career, fully dedicated into the service logistics aspect, leading the team on the business development side for Latin America and North America. And then I just really focus on the North America business for the past 5 years. Right now, taking over on the new challenge as a Chief Customer Officer globally, trying to really standardize the way that we approach our business, offer our value proposition, and really try to solve the problems that our customers are facing in the industry today. You mentioned a couple of quite interesting topics that we're going to be discussing about digitalization, AI, and how is that just leveraging the profitability of the business of our customers. And that is key for us right now. It's how do we really bring that value proposition into the table of our customers for them to be more successful and bring the profit back into the business.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to both of you for being here. I've got a feeling this is going to be a real cracker of a session. So let's start off at high level, state of the industry. John, the Service Council runs that annual survey that captures the key priorities and pressures that service supply chain leaders are under today. What are the latest insights that you're seeing?
Yeah, thank you for the question to kick us off here. And I think, we could certainly talk about tariffs. Tariffs was kind of like that big audacious word, just like COVID was back a couple years ago. Ultimately, there's been a lot of disruption, right? And there's still disruption around the world. Certainly, China, Mexico, Canada are still impacted quite heavily. Southeast Asia, there's other parts of the region like, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, and then you've got EMEA that's still being impacted. We could park that conversation, but certainly tariffs is still on the mind. But ultimately, a resilient service supply chain
Mm.
can fight off some of these macroeconomic pressures and some of these uncertainties. I think the biggest gripe is the suddenness. And so we're hearing a lot more about this resiliency factor and how can we become more resilient. And resilience is superseding this whole focus on efficiency. One of the signals that we're seeing from our KPIs and service supply chain benchmark surveys. There's a couple of surveys that I'm blending together here in terms of the trends that are predicting some of the things that we're seeing from a trending perspective. Is that supply chain ranked fifth out of six metrics according to service
Wow.
leaders. So it's a little bit down the totem pole. And so what we continue to hear is a little bit of a siloed approach. Service, end-to-end service is people, process, data technology, and information. It's also
Mm.
parts. And oftentimes those two business units are segregated. And so there's a little bit of a siloed, disintegrated process where you think about parts and its importance in service throughput. One of the things that's really shocking, according to our research, is that 42% of service leaders indicate that greater than 20% of their first time fixed rate misses are caused because they don't have an unavailable part. And it's just massive, right? And so if you think about the cost, the efficiency gains that can be had in terms of that efficient, integrated process workflow,
Mm.
that's something that we continue to hear. So that's one of the major trends that I'm tracking.
Amazing. Does that chime with what you're hearing from customers, Jose?
Yeah, Lou, 100%. And I think one of the key elements right now, it's about managing data. It's about how our customers manage their data and the visibility on their networks and the parts that they have on their networks. The
Mm.
element of having the right part at the right place, it's right now one of the most important elements. The planning aspect of the business, it is key. And the customers are right now looking into how to improve their resiliency by having not only the part at the right location or at the right country. It's literally how do they have it as close as they can to the system that they have deployed in order to comply with the SLAs that they have right now agreed with their own customers.
Right. And are you guys seeing this as an emerging trend? Is this something that has changed over the last months or years? I'm guessing it's not a new thing to come with tariffs. It's probably that perhaps tariffs has focused the attention of late. Jose.
No, I think this is the bread and butter of the business that we face today, right?
Right.
I think more and more the complexity of the systems, the amount of parts that are needed on the field are increasing that level of planning, right? And the way that our customers are really looking into how do they leverage the systems that they have to be
Mm.
able to fulfill their needs. I don't know, John, if you see something different.
No, I think it's been evolving and emerging, and something that's been here for a little while. I just think that the the issues that arise because of these challenges and how this manifests itself in terms of the bottom line to the organization are starting
Yeah.
to become more profound, right? So, when you miss a first time fix rate scenario in terms of rolling a truck or dispatching someone, well, guess what happens? You have to repeat visit, and there's costs
Yeah.
associated with dispatch costs. And oftentimes that leads to parts shotgunning and rush shipping parts so that you can have it available so that you can get in and avoid that situation. The missing the SLA commitments, that leads to asset downtime, right? And
Mm.
so oftentimes there's penalties associated with that SLA lack of achievement, right? And so that ultimately hits the bottom line, the profit. And so you're seeing costs rise, you're seeing profit go down, and it just becomes a real bad scenario. So
So are there any companies or sectors even that are doing this well, John? Who stands out for
yeah.
you in terms of people who are really getting it right?
I think there's a couple. Industrial manufacturing, high tech, medical healthcare are doing a really, really sound job.
Right.
And they're doing a sound job because they're looking at it end to end. They're looking at IoT and connected assets. They're looking at predictive signals from IoT. That's driving into the service supply chain and creating that resiliency and predictive, proactive approach. One of the organizations that comes out and speaks to me, and this is the whole concept of going from defense to offense, because this sourcing strategy evolution is something that we've been monitoring for many years now, right? Nearshore, onshore, even insourcing has been common. And that's a little bit of a defensive strategy. We're seeing a shift more to an offensive strategy where they're starting to think about service and supply chain as a profit mindset. And one of the organizations that I'll speak to, BMW, is doing exactly that. And if you look at new automobiles that are shipped, they see anywhere from 10 to 14 points of margin on new vehicles that are shipped. But when you look at aftermarket, they can see profits rise from 50 to upwards of 65%. And so that's an organization that's just witnessing the importance of aftermarket and doing a really good job in terms of that transition from cost to profit mindset.
Amazing. And are you seeing the same thing from the customers you speak to, Jose? Who's getting that navigation of great service and strong margins really right for us?
Yeah, I think what John mentioned is quite important, because in many cases, what we're seeing from our customers and as part of our research meetings, it is the fact that right now, by selling the equipments or the systems, the margins are acceptable. But when they talk about, selling the service agreements around those equipments and just maintaining those equipments for 10, 15 years on the field, that's where the real money is coming, right? That's where the true profit is coming into the organizations. Now, all these industries that we're working with, in reality, is it has two main factors. One, it is the fact on what is the impact on a system being down, right? In
Right.
any industrial segment. But when you talk about, high tech, or when you talk about even medical devices, you're talking that there's a patient at the end, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we have several cases, and one of the I think that the most important for me, it's when we're talking with customers that they have systems for cancer treatment, for example, right?
Yep.
It's having one system down. It means that that patient, it's not able to get their cancer treatment. So you are not only
Yep.
dealing with what is the cost related to that, you are dealing with the fact that there's a life at the end of the supply chain, right?
It's
So
not just an
that's why it's so.
inconvenience, is it?
Yeah. It's quite important, and that's why it's really key for us to be top of the edge on how are we working and collaborating with the customers, for them to be able to deliver what their promise is.
For sure, and it has such a profound impact on brand as well. Our customers do not want us to contribute to them getting it wrong here. So important, particularly in that medical devices space, that medical service logistics space, as you say, that we're all getting it right. So to drive that quality of service, what strategies should companies be looking at to extract the greatest value from service logistics?
So I'll go ahead and jump in first. I think, one of the things that I thought was really interesting from our research is we start to cross tab some of the research surveys that we conduct. One of which is this big annual service leaders agenda,
Hmm.
and the other is the service supply chain. And so
Right.
we looked at the combination of these two data sets, and we saw an interesting correlation. 80% of those who are prioritizing improvements in in service parts management, 80% are increasing their service revenue targets in 2025. Yet for those who don't prioritize improvements to service parts, only 55% are increasing their service revenue targets. So I just wanted to harp on the importance of service parts in this process, in this story of service, because service is often an afterthought,
Yeah.
and it's becoming a forethought in terms of the importance and lifeblood of certainly profit-minded organizations within the manufacturing area. And so it's starting to rise again, which is really interesting to see. In terms of the critical ingredients to success, I talked a little bit about it already. It is people, it's process, it's technology, it's data, and it's parts, all integrated together into one integrated story. And technology has certainly come about in terms of the importance of technology, and we'll talk about AI. I'm sure that's coming up. We talk about technology that it's both people and technology, not people or technology. Certainly,
Yeah.
we see, autonomous journeys and opportunities to, subordinate certain tasks, whether they're mundane or strategic in nature, through technology and through autonomous technologies like AI and agentic AI and all these other rising, capabilities. But we're seeing still the importance of people, process, technology, all these things integrated together. And that's one of the messages I wanted to bring through for our audience today.
It's a really interesting point because I think we often talk about the strategy behind this. We talk about strategic planning and investment to get this right. But what I'm hearing is more and more people are thinking about the critical service that makes that strategic planning and investment really work. Are are our customers, Jose, or are people out there really embedding service into the business model to make this happen? Is this happening by accident or is it something they are really laser focused on?
No, I think, Lou, that it has been an evolution, right?
Right.
And it has been an evolution that the services side of the business, it's getting more and more visibility, right, within the
Mm.
organizations. The fact about the level of profitability that services bring compared to just, selling the new systems out to the market, it's just getting the attention of the CFOs and the CEOs of the organization. So that is
Mm.
just giving, the service organization a seat on the table, right, at the C level to discuss what are these strategies that they need to follow in order to make a better business case for that organization. Now, in terms of the strategies that we are seeing more and more right now in the industry, in particular on high tech, it is some of our main customers are starting to look at an integrated supply chain. As John mentioned at the beginning, the services supply chain, and let's call it the finished goods, right, supply chains, they were just separated, right? They were just working in two silos and they were not integrated. Right now,
Right.
our customers are starting to bring all that back together into one head. And the idea of doing that, it's two main things. It's give the same value, right, or the same importance to both part of the businesses. But the other one, it's about how can they leverage technologies, people, processes, and
Mm.
don't only have two silos working independent. It's really how do they merge their supply chain and they leverage the value of having their entire supply chain together, because we're starting to see more and more on these strategies that potentially we're going to be talking about this, right? Circularity, the way that we are managing or our customers are managing returns, the way that our customers are just looking on how to give a second life to their systems, to their parts,
Mm.
to their equipment. And by bringing everything together into one roof, it's incredible to see the amount of opportunities that are unlocked.
Lou, if I could, there's
Sure.
a interesting data point that kind of comes right behind Jose's viewpoints here. And that is, we asked the question, what are the top challenges that are facing your service parts business? And number one answer choice, 62% of respondents, was coordinating the flow of different supply sources. So that whole network tower concept, right? Jose, I know
Right.
that speaks to your language. The other thing was integrating parts within the overall service business. 51% indicated the integration into the service parts, of the service parts into the overall service business. So there's intentionality of creating that end-to-end service supply chain. And we look at some of the correlating data behind all this. 1 in 3 respondents are planning to increase inventory closer to the demand, while another
Right.
third of
Oh, wow.
respondents expect to improve their demand predictability to deal with this. So there's intentionality of connecting the business, integrating the business. There's
Mm.
connect there and there's intentionality of trying to predict demand and supply, which has become the uncertainty. It used to be supply chain demand variability. Now it's supply variability that's coming into the mix here. And so there's a little bit of a shakeup in terms of the focus of how can we get greater control and strength around the whole variability of supply relationships, not just the
And
demand side.
how much of that has been contingent upon the availability of data? I mean, I know from a marketing perspective, we live for a bit of predictive analytics. If we're able to somehow predict what customers want and when they're likely to want it, that's genius. But that really is contingent upon having great data and great data available. Is the same true here? Is that something this happened fairly recently?
It has, yeah. This is coming about with this new relationships that's being formed with data right now, with all the progressive technologies that are coming about, yes, it's evolving right before our eyes. And how can you make proactive decisions about inventory sourcing, and then assess the incidence and the desirability of the front line? You have to do it real time. You have to have inputs and outputs, and you have to look at digitizing the whole process so that you can extract that data and take it from analog to digital, and then you have to go through digitalization and then transform it into how does it evolve your business process altogether. And so we're seeing some really incredible things that are done through technology, certainly AI, but we're also seeing some of the old school technologies like BI and analytics, and the importance of platform technologies that this data is living in. Because another big thing that service leaders really struggle with is this disparate database of data, right? There's all sorts of databases of, and sources of data that exist around the globe. How can we get that single source of truth? And so we're continue to see an intention around kind of building this into an integrated single source of truth.
So what's that doing to the sort of people who work in service logistics? Because typically you want people who are focused on great processes, great technology, as you say, John, and service. I'm guessing you're seeing more people who are data savvy, perhaps more analysts, more people who
Yeah.
can speak to analysts. Is that what we're seeing, both in terms of demand and supply, Jose?
Yeah, I think what is interesting about this is, and I'm just going back to the point that John was mentioning about the amount of data. The key here is, how do you manage and you massage all that data and just put it together in a way that the team who is responsible to make decisions can make better informed decisions, right?
Yeah.
Data is there. It's just how do you process that? And I think one of the key elements that I got from the previous sessions that we've been working with the Service Council, it's this new generation about technicians on the field, right?
Mm.
They're tech savvies, right? It's people that they want to have all their information at their fingerprints. They want to
Yeah.
be able in one device to know everything and anything about their part that it is coming, but all the way to getting into a system and fixing it, having all the manuals, having that access even to remote collaboration, on the sense that they can have these smart glasses looking at the equipment, and having somebody at a control tower just telling them, hey, you need to press the right, left, and upper bottom, right, to make sure that it works, right? And that level of technical elements, digitalization, and tools that the industry is bringing into the services supply chain, it's quite interesting on that evolution, right, and the process that we are seeing.
And Lou, if I could build behind Jose here on that very topic, it's a real important one. The role of the frontline technician is evolving from blue collar to white collar, right?
Sure.
And so we're it's not just turning wrench and dirty hands type job. That certainly still exists in many industries, but we're seeing it evolve to this technical skill set and capability requirements that are far progressive than previous years, right? And so
And exactly what you said a moment ago, John, isn't it? It's not just about having people and technology now. It's people with judgment to understand how to use that technology. Again, we find the same in marketing. I can give you data all day long. What I can't easily do is give you the judgment to know what to do with it.
We actually do an annual research survey called the Voice of the Field Service Engineer, a real important survey. And
wow.
we benchmarked over 10,000 technicians over the last 3 years, and we asked them, what's the day in the life of a technician? What would you ask management for? What do you like, dislike? What sort of functionality would improve a day in your life, right? How could we remove friction from your day to day so that we can achieve first time fix rate? The number 1, 3, and 5 response in terms of desired functionality was service parts inventory visibility, service parts ordering, and transfer of truck stock to and from a colleague, right? So the importance of parts is right there in terms of the front line. We call it a technician agnostic platform, and Jose is right. It's not just the parts, it's also the information, the manuals, and all this other things. But again, it's this wheel of fortune that brings all the capability requirements to the front line. because of the importance. They're that moment of truth with the customer every time.
Fascinating. Honestly, I hadn't thought about it in that context before, but it really is that kind of confluence between your technology, your people, and the skill sets that bring the two together. It just makes this such a specific part of the supply chain that I'm not sure anybody's given enough focus to be honest. So we've looked at the ones who are doing it well, people who aren't maximizing that profitability. What are the sort of things that are typically holding them back? John.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's a lot of the things that we've covered, but I'll kind of reframe them for you.
Okay.
The lack of effective triage and diagnosis at the front
Right.
of the service experience is causing multiple dispatches, and it's also causing parts shotgunning, which is the rush shipment of parts. What else is happening is, we talked about the front line. What else is happening is the front line is hoarding parts. So you see inflation of parts that are happening in truck stock inventory, and all of a sudden, someone is managing the burden of that cost, right?
All right.
So that's something that I think is a big critical factor is really getting close to and spending the appropriate amount of time to triage and diagnose issues. And that can be through technologies that inform you predictively, IoT, machine learning, and all those things. It can also be through the contact center, the technical support center, and then also the handoff between remote support and dispatch-centric support or field service. So I would say that those are really, where things start to fall down a little bit.
And Jose, are you seeing the same sort of thing from your vantage point? What are the internal or external blockers that you're helping customers navigate?
I think, Lou, yeah, I 100% agree with what John is mentioning. But a key element that we are seeing and learning more and more is the structure about change management.
Right.
The evolution in the services supply chain has been incredible in the past, I will say, 8 to 10 years, right? And that evolution, it's requiring the organizations to do a proper change management process, make sure that the organization understands what is important that the services supply chain brings to their business and how much focus do they need to put. So I will say that the most successful organizations that had been able to leverage the profitability on the services side are those that had been able to really adapt on the change management, driving that top to bottom, right? And make sure that the organization understands the why, right? Why it
Yeah.
is important to change, why it is important to manage the systems the way that they are doing, why it is important to manage the data. And John mentioned something quite interesting, which is who is the person ordering the parts, right? There are several organizations that they have their technicians ordering their parts and making sure that they have it on the trunk stock. And what we're seeing more and more, it is that just gives them that peace of mind that in case they need it, they have it. But at the end, they're not the ones controlling the true spend of that. So the amount of capex that these organizations they have on the field, it is ridiculous, right? There are
Right.
some, medical devices organizations today that they have over $2 billion on spare parts on the field. That in some cases they don't even know exactly what their part is because it is
Yeah.
on a trunk stock, which is it's something that if we are able to fix as a service provider or as an organization, that is massive. It's a huge impact, right, to the overall numbers of our organization.
So is that literally stockpiling just in case? One or two items just in case. And
Oh,
how
definitely.
do we address that? Is that to do with gaining the trust of the orderer, the guy at the end? I suppose he or she doesn't want to be the one who doesn't have that part and therefore can't do that job. Is that about closing the gap around transparency and trust and building service up that way?
It's certainly it is parts disposition. It's figuring out governance and
Mm,
control and who has the authority to make those types of decisions. We see some organizations that have built trust and have built an organizational structure where frontline can order parts freely, and we've seen other scenarios where that's more governed and controlled so that it doesn't get out of hand. Jose brings up a good point. Some of these aftermarket parts are quite expensive, and you can see, if you have a several thousand global technician workforce that are freely ordering, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of parts, all of a sudden, here we go.
Yeah.
So, it really does depend on, the organizational culture in terms of that trust factor. I would say we see more governance than we see free open spend. That would probably be my viewpoint on things. And so, yeah.
This is such an interesting conversation because often I certainly find myself in ultimate podcasts talking about how supply chains have become a strategic decision. And what we're talking about here is that strategic decision is a complete waste of time if you're not implementing it at the
Yeah.
grassroots level, really tactically with great processes. And it reminds me, this is showing my age, back in the day, Six Sigma, let's manage the delta, let's manage the thing really, really well that we're not getting right. So Jose, sorry, I cut across you there. What were you about to say?
And I was just gonna add something, right? Which is going back to the change management process, right?
Mm.
I will say that on this evolution in the service supply chain, sometimes the technician element, right, or the field engineers that we have on the fields report to a different structure than supply chain.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And by having all these structures in silos, that is what has been created, that gap, right? And that understanding. More and more, as John said, there's pretty well educated, right, and centrally controlled way of ordering parts and having those on the field. But I am going back to that change management. That is key for the organization to really restructure the way that they face this business, and that they are really make sure that they trust the process. You make a great point, Lou, about does the field technicians trust the process? And we've been seeing in some cases that it takes some time, right? And sometimes you need to go one by one and run a pilot, right? And having some group of people within that organization that starts talking positive about the experience that they got, that is, instead of just having their trunk stock, right? They were able to fulfill their service in 2 hours. We were able to deliver the part in 2 hours. And they had food visibility, right? We always talk about this, Amazon experience or Uber experience, in which they are able to see their part going their way and getting into them with GPS tracking capabilities. That is key. If you can build the trust that the process is going to work, that they're going to have their part, and that they're going to be able to fulfill that service need, I think that's going to be the key for success.
And the other thing Lou, the other thing I could build off of Jose's viewpoints on this whole change management process is that we asked the question, what are the biggest roadblocks to technology adoption and service, from leadership all the way down to frontline? The lack of clarity on the return on investment from those initiatives is number one. Number two was the lack of internal talent to leverage those capabilities that are being enhanced through the technology. And then there's data security concerns behind that. But one of the things that this kind of boils up to is that when there's the lack of clarity on process and intentionality of these transformations, which they're not projects, they don't start and stop. They're true transformations that just continue. It's a continuum.
Ongoing.
Yeah. And when the brain has the lack of clarity on something, it functions from the same area of distrust. That's actually research that has been done in the world of behavioral science. And so you've got to have a great communication plan internally. You have to involve the frontline in all these innovation opportunities, and ultimately you have to have a really clear vision in terms of the executional process. Otherwise, there's going to be mistrust across the organization, and ultimately there'll be adoption challenges, and it'll be a real tricky process. So
I totally agree, and I've got to be honest. It's one of the things I love about our board. I don't think it's well known, but people see it on LinkedIn. Whenever our board has a meeting, they spend time on site, and they spend time on site talking to people who do real jobs, to get a real understanding of what are those very tactical barriers to success. And often, there are some strategic things, but even if you get the strategy right, if you haven't got that change management to make sure that the strategy turns into something that is tangible on a daily basis, particularly on something like service, trust is so important, and we've got to trust our frontline to get it right. So
Indeed.
we can't avoid it. I'm going to ask the question. Let's talk about, where do you see AI making the biggest impact in service logistics? Let's start with Jose. Where do you think? What's AI doing for you?
Well, there are different things that we're trying with AI.
Mhm.
A lot of elements that we're doing on triage processes and the way that we manage returns, and having a lot of the manual processes that we had on the past. Just bringing AI into the mix. We have a tool that we call RCT that it has been in a constant evolution, which is a remote collaboration tool that
Mm.
brings a lot of processes into one single tool leveraged by AI, that it's helping us just improve the way that the processes are conducted without the four walls. Now, also on the AI side, we are working a lot right now on the digital twin element, right? And how can we support our customers and their organizations to really play with different scenarios, right? And just
Mm.
asking the what if things, and things that were taking us a long time to process. Right
Yeah.
now, we are quite efficient and we are doing it way faster than that.
Incredible. And is that fairly typical, John? Is that what you're seeing in research? Are other companies investing in the same sort of area?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of well, first of all, AI is the predominant technology right now in the
Yeah.
service world for sure.
Yeah.
We a couple pit stops in the last 18 months. At the beginning of 2024, about 27% of our service leaders were prioritizing an investment in AI. Midpoint, 49%. Latter point,
Oh.
62%. This year, 77%. So it just continues to go up and to the right. So we see a lot of projects. We see a lot of, um, you know, hopes and dreams that AI will make an impact to the organization. And we see it all along the service supply chain. So we see it pointed at remote infrastructure scenarios. How can we, deploy AI in remote settings in terms of customer interaction and managing,
Hmm.
close to the customer interaction. We see it in the field service dispatch scenario. We see it in the technician scenario where they're, using AI to summarize, case summaries. So that's a lot easier for them because paperwork and admin is a real bog to the field technician in terms of utilization.
Hmm.
With respect to supply chain, I see a tremendous opportunity for AI. I see it in terms of, you think about complex networks and all the communications that have to happen. And
Mm.
there's so many opportunities for some of those communications to happen autonomously. And to use some of those predictive data signals that we already have it, and actually integrate it into AI and have AI help subordinate some of those communication tasks. And so I'm excited about the application of AI to supply chain. It's something we're actually building into our state of supply chain moving forward because a lot of people are pointing it at other areas of service, and I think supply chain is a tremendous opportunity.
So I can guess the answer to this question, but what gets in the way of AI? I imagine it's the same thing that gets in the way of AI on the marketing side. But what are you guys seeing, Jose, with our customers, and John in the market in general?
Yeah.
What are the key challenges to getting it right?
Jose first or me?
Go ahead, John. I'll follow
You
you.
go
Right.
ahead,
Yeah.
John. What are you seeing,
So
and then we'll confirm
uh,
whether it's what we're seeing.
yeah, the whole think big, start small concept is true in the scenario of AI right now. Certainly, I actually I would rather think big, go big with AI. That's my personal opinion, because it is going to become systemic to the organization. It's going to become systemic to enterprise commerce moving forward. I think
Mm.
we all agree. And so, we see the four biggest challenges are ROI clarity is just wildly off, right? There's
Yeah.
way too high of return on investment storylines and total cost of ownership storylines that misset expectations with executive leadership. So that's number one. Number two, the internal talent that it takes to utilize the data, and to extract value from the
Back to that
technology.
judgment thing, right?
massive,
Yeah.
absolutely. Data foundation is another big challenge, right? There's, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you don't have clean data, how can you
Mm.
extract value from optimizing that data? And then lastly, I would say, there's a lot of challenge with sort of who owns this, right?
Right.
So there's like a real battle happening. Line of business service wants to innovate in pockets. IT
Mm.
is saying, oh, we've got AI. So now you've got competing priorities, and some of these innovations that have happened in little pockets along the service supply chain are being commandeered by the IT roadmap. And so I would encourage, and we constantly can encourage service executive leadership to reach across the aisle, partner with not only supply chain, which I talked a little bit about, but also IT,
Mm.
because it's just a critical part of the journey.
I think
Amazing.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and you explained it in the right way, John. For me, the adoption of AI, it is linked about what is the data that you have to really bring that return on the investment, right? And how do you manage that data? Because if the data is not correct, then you need to start all the way from there, right? I I still believe that we are just on the tip of the iceberg. We haven't seen in reality all the values and all the benefits that AI can bring into the business in terms of optimization of processes, in
Mm.
terms of optimization on the way that we see and manage data, and most important, it's how can we just paint all the different scenarios to make the right decisions? Because this is not about taking people out of the process by implementing AI. It's just to
Mm.
really make people smarter, right? Just giving them the
Yeah.
right tools and the right visibility around what they're doing for them to be better.
And sometimes that whole speed and scale thing, I mean, if you think about what's happening with tariffs, none of us can keep up with it. It's so hard to get ahead of it. And if you were able, and I know, there's work going on about how we might be more predictive about that and how we might be able to apply a digital twin context to that. If you could just get ahead of it and allow customers to model the reassurance that would give people, and the efficiency. Um, yeah, it's like I said earlier, I feel like tariffs has given us a real catalyst for some of this change. So as much as I whinge about it, because I do on a daily basis, tariffs are often one of my biggest headaches, particularly around the communication of them. But it is a great accelerator for change and innovation. Um, Guys, what's next for service logistics? What do you see as the next big shifts in this space? Jose, let's start with you.
Well, I think that as I mentioned, right, the services industry it's on a pure evolution, right?
Yeah.
Getting more visibility. As I said, it's getting a seat on the table. It's for me, it's everything about technology, digitalization, making processes more efficient, and we will think about the future on how to really move from descriptive to prescriptive analytics, right?
Mm.
In the sense of being able to know when a system on the field will fail, that will help us to be there ahead of time, right? And that is
Right.
linked to IoT, parts, components, information, data. But I see that as a future, which is not so far, by the way. And what we can support and what we can see as a true value is how to really improve the processes, right? Is how can we standardize the way that we see the services supply chain around the world, independently on the country that we are talking about, and it is how to really, um, improve the level of visibility and data
Mm.
management for people to make right decisions. That's for me, it's how the future of the services supply chain will look like.
Yeah.
Amazing. John, are you seeing this through your research? Anything you need
I
to add?
I am. Yeah, I would add a couple of things. We're seeing, so I talked about demand and supply variability.
Mhm.
We're hearing a lot more around demand and supply shaping. So actually
Oh.
shaping the demand and the supply. On the demand side, we're seeing, the management of excess, proactively selling. We're seeing, accurate fulfillment and looking at inventory pre-positioning in a different way, right? In terms of, how are we sourcing? On the supplier side and supply shaping, we're seeing, looking at hoarding. I talked a little bit about the parts hoarding.
Mm.
We're seeing shotgunning behaviors being eliminated. We're seeing harvesting, a lot of reman focus. So a lot of industries are focused on taking dirty core from expired or defective parts and bringing them back in and reman and redistributing them. And then, there's some other aspects to, there's supply chain fraud and all sorts of other things that kind of go on the supplier side that are tricky to manage. But I think this mindset shift from variability to shaping is a big part of next gen supply chain and service supply chain. So, and certainly AI is a big part of that. So,
And just
Amazing.
to add a topic on that, Lou, that I think that it is quite important that we're seeing in the industry, the increase of circularity, right? The increase
Right.
of attention on the multiple industries to reduce the
Mhm.
waste, right? And to minimize the amount of components, parts going to the landfills. That is truly becoming one of the key elements about the environment, but most important, it's about how those organizations can provide a second life to a component or equipment, and how do they integrate that into the services supply chain. It's going to be key for the future.
Right. And John, just to finish,
Yeah.
is that a trend you're seeing? Is
definitely.
right? Okay, you're seeing
Yeah,
that in your research.
circularity is a big part of it, and the reason why kind of there's multiple aspects here. One is, capital equipment. It used to be 5 to 7 years. Now it's starting
Mm.
to be expanded. So we're seeing longer life cycle of assets. With
Right.
that, there's more breakdown. With that, there's more requirement to keep parts that can supply and fix those broken down parts. So there's a lot of that as part of this. That's one of the big things that we're tracking for sure. So reman is, and then you start to think about, okay, we're just talking about it in a really simplistic methodology here. We're talking about OEM produces parts. Well, now OEMs are looking to offer multi-vendor services to not just their own components, but other manufacturers that might be competitive in nature, right? So take the
Right.
healthcare industry, right? Siemens is helping support Samsung and Philips and other manufactured components. And so the complexity, it just starts to snowball. And so, yeah, reman's a big part of this, a big source of profit as well. So, yeah.
Amazing. Guys, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I've loved the fact that we've been able to talk about service providers, as in individuals who are actually providing that service, right up to the strategic approach to planning that service now and in the future. John, thank you so much for bringing your research-based perspective. Love a man who can speak percentages. And Jose, thank you for seeing what you're sharing on the ground with our customers day in, day out. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you both for being
Lou,
here.
thank you for the opportunity of having us here. Why, it's quite an interesting topic for us that we have deep in our hearts. So it's interesting to just share with all the audience.
Amazing.
Likewise,
It'd be great to
thank you
get
for the
you guys
invitation.
back post-tariff. So perhaps we could have a
Absolutely.
conversation about how tariffs has perhaps been part of that change management agenda. I would love to do that with you guys.
Would welcome that opportunity.
Brilliant. So thank you again, and thanks to everyone for listening. We would love to hear your thoughts on this, but also let us know what other topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. Please let us have your feedback. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. You can do all of that in the notes below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to follow the Ultimate Supply Chain podcast for more conversations like this one. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us.